Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. 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 How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב
I invite you to please be seated. Good morning, friends, and welcome. Welcome to Temple Israel here in Westport. Welcome to those of you who are part of our congregation and our community, as well as those who've come from much farther away, from Buffalo and from Massachusetts and from New York and from everywhere else in between, to say farewell and to share remembrances and stories of our beloved departed Philip Stark, and to be with Phil's family, and to give them love and hugs and support as they traverse the Valley of Shadows. I'm Rabbi Michael Friedman, Senior Rabbi here at Temple Israel. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. And I want to offer a special welcome to those who are joining us via the live stream. So many of Marcia and Phil's friends in Massachusetts and closer here now in Connecticut and from elsewhere. We know that your presence is so important to Marcia and to the whole family and to you yourselves on this day. We thank you for being with us. In Hebrew, a funeral is called a halvaya. It comes from the root of the word to accompany. And so Phil accompanied all of you throughout the journey of your life. He accompanied you with steadfastness, with love and generosity and caring, and a wonderful sense of humor and attentiveness and joy. And now you do him a wonderful honor by accompanying him here as we say farewell. After 94 years of a life very, very well lived. For each of us carries within us a unique spark implanted by God. And we might say that our job during however much time God gives us on earth is to let that spark shine, grow, bring light and love to those we love and to our world, which at sometimes can seem so very dark. Phil knew just how to let his light shine, his spark glow. His love of science, his commitment to family and friends, his sense of humor, all were part of his spark in this world. And so that is what we will remember on this day. And even though death has taken our beloved husband and father-in-law and grandfather and friend, and even though our world is a bit darker at this darkest time of our year, and even though our friends and family in this front row may shed a tear, even though they may be lost at times in sorrow, still, God, we thank you on this day. We thank you for Phil's love that we know, we experienced, and we carry forward with us. We thank you for the gift of Phil's life, which brings us together today. We thank you for the companionship that we shared along life's path with him. We thank you for the tender memories that we bring to this place. We thank you for the many unique and special gifts of his heart, his mind, and his soul. For all these and more, we give our thanks to you, God, and we offer these words of our psalms. Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri, ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz, al yitain lamut raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael, Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha, yomam hashemesh lo yakeka ve'yareach balayla, Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha, Adonai yishmor tzeircha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. We lift our eyes to the mountains. What is the source of our help? Our help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. For the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand, so that the sun shall not strike you by day nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going out and your coming in, now and forever. Amen. And now the 23rd Psalm, which is the biblical poet's vision of a perfect life, a life of peace and fulfillment, of comfort and happiness. Adonai ro'i lo echzar, bin ot desha yarbitzeni al me menuchot yenachaleni nafshi yeshovev. Yancheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech begetz al mavet lo ira ra ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yerdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai la'orech yamim. God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God helps me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. God, you lead me in the right paths for the sake of your name. And even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you, God, are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Amen. And our final biblical selection this morning is from the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes was a man who lived in Jerusalem more than 2,000 years ago. He, like Phil, lived a long life, and he saw so much in his days on this earth, as did Phil. And he wrote these words which have been passed down to us. L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chafetz tachat hashamayim. Et laledet ve'et lamut, et latad ve'et la'akor natua, et lifrotz ve'et livnot, et livkot ve'et lischok, et spod ve'et rukod. For every single thing, there's a season, and there's a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak. And speak, indeed we shall, of Philip Stark, known in our tradition as Feivel ben Yaakov. I'll share just a few words before inviting family members here to speak. Phil was born in Brooklyn in 1930 to Jacob and Fanny. The whole extended family lived in one home with Phil's grandfather and two aunts. They moved to the Bronx when Phil was a young child, and then he attended Stuyvesant High School, and then, as many of you know, MIT, where he got his undergraduate degree and his PhD. Phil and Marcia met at a Hillel dance. They were introduced by Janet, who I believe is here today. She was a freshman at Brandeis, just 18 years old, and he was 24 at the time. And Marcia said that it just felt like they belonged together right away. And indeed, they have been together ever since. They got married just after Phil got his PhD, and then they moved to Ohio for 2 years as Phil served in the U.S. Air Force. David was born there. And then they moved back to Massachusetts, and soon after, John was born. Phil was a scientist at his core. He loved science. He loved talking about it. He was inspired by it. And he also had a wonderful sense of humor and an optimism that was contagious. As a dad, he was very caring. He was a great listener. He was always interested in what his two boys were doing. And as a grandfather, to Abby, Jake, Sam, Billy, and Rachel, he was so funny. He always made them laugh, took them on trips and adventures, of course, with Marcia. He was so affectionate, and he would always ask about what they were learning, studying, or pursuing. Phil and Marcia moved from Massachusetts to Connecticut about a year ago. And sadly, Phil's health declined over that past year. He needed more and more assistance. But he was always very gracious and grateful about it. He would always thank his aides and his family. Phil celebrated his 94th birthday just a few weeks ago. It was tradition for the family to always get together for this occasion. And even though Phil wasn't quite in the mood, he went through with it. He went ahead with it because he knew that it was important to his kids and his grandkids. And then, thankfully, the end came relatively quickly. His family gave him the very best of care through a difficult 9 days in the hospital. His passing was tough but beautiful, as John described it. And so here we are, prepared to offer many memories and many tributes. We first invite his son David to the bema.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to celebrate Dad's, Phil's, Papa's life. It is hard to believe that just 2 weeks ago, we were celebrating Dad's birthday, and he was so happy that day to celebrate with his family. And he was very lucky to live and enjoy 94 years. Very few of us can do that, and he was lucky in that way. I know a number of family members will be speaking today, and I'm sure they'll touch upon my father's many accomplishments. However, I wanted, just in a couple of minutes, to focus on him as a father, and in particular, our relationship. When the family was talking yesterday with the rabbi, I know that Dad was always interested in what we were involved in, whether it was a subject of interest to him otherwise or not. He would get involved in and discuss our school projects, my cycling mania, for lack of a better word. I'm a major cyclist, or skiing. In fact, he even took skiing lessons briefly to learn how to ski when John and I were learning how to ski as little kids. However, perhaps one area we were connected the most was our interest in Judaism and in Israel. Dad, although not very religious, was very interested in Judaism, perhaps more from a logic background as opposed to a traditionally religious point of view, given his background as a scientist, and in Jewish history. He had a love of Israel and the Jewish people as a peoplehood. And he likely sparked that interest in me back in 1967, even though I was just still a little kid when the Six-Day War occurred. From that time on, I developed a deep interest in Jewish things and in Israel, and some of my most interesting conversations were, as I developed a more academic interest in Judaism and Israel in high school and college, were the discussions I had with Dad on those topics. He was always excited to learn more and to talk about it and to question me. He was eager to talk to me about my courses in Nedges and, of course, in other things, and what I was learning and in a way learned along with me. I'll never forget those conversations and times with him. I think in general, he had this passion for learning more about whatever John or I were doing or learning, or what his grandchildren were doing, and becoming actively involved in those things. That passion, I believe, kept him young and his mind always engaged until the end. Thank you.
welcome John to the Bema.
Okay, I might not be as composed. I grabbed it. Thank you. My father was a very special man. He was a jokester who was incredibly bright. He loved his family more than anything. 15 years ago, I was in a car with my father in Concord. Always a jokester, he said to me, "Are you going to miss me when I'm dead?" The question stopped me in my tracks. I recovered to say the only right thing to say. "Dad, you're going to be around for a long time, and I'll miss you when you die." But really, I was thinking a different thought. I was thinking you will always be with me because you're so much part of me. That year, on his 80th birthday, I wrote what I called Dad's 10 Commandments. And this was really to try to tell him how his influence was so important to me and my family. He liked to get family and friends, as Dave said, to tell him what was going on. He made others feel good through fun conversation and a joke. Nothing made him happier than hearing stories about what one of the Starks was doing. When I was younger, my father would coach me on trying to be more organized. I had to hear that monkey story often. The story went, on the beautiful sunny days, the monkeys would be swinging from the trees, having fun and playing games with each other. Then, when the rain would come, the monkeys would be shivering under the branches, saying they would build a home to stay warm when the rain stopped. But when the sun came back out, those monkeys were back playing without a thought of the house. Dad was very happy as he watched me build my house over time. Later in life, and actually until very recently, I'm almost near retirement, but my father continued to give me advice, in particular on work, because we talked about work a fair amount. He would coach me to be calm and patient, which are two things he perfected. He would tell me not to yell at people and be patient with them at work, although I'm not sure I yelled at them. My colleagues all loved these stories when I recounted them. My father never passed a special occasion with a family without saying how lucky he was to have found my mom and how much he loved her. And it was funny, right before we walked in, Jake was pulling up some pictures of my dad when he was not even a young man, a boy. And it reminded me, all the pictures of my father before he met my mom, he had a very stern face. And then after he met Mom in the pictures, he had that big grin that he had all the time. My father had a positive attitude and never let regrets get him. This week, I had to have the tough conversation with him that he was terminal and was going to die. He said, "I have had a good run in life and I'm okay." His only concern about dying was that Mom would be taken care of. My father enjoyed life because of the way he lived it rather than good luck. He was meticulous about not wasting anything, and he did not waste life. If life is a tube of toothpaste, he squeezed out every bit of that toothpaste. For everything, there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. My father lived life to the fullest through all the seasons. While the last 9 days of my father's life was difficult, it was a beautiful way to end a well-lived life. He got to say his goodbyes. He passed peacefully and breathed his last breath, knowing that the love of his life was at his side. I got to say goodbye to him in ways I couldn't imagine 15 years before, when he joked in asking me whether I would miss him. His memory is a blessing.
We invite Donna to the bema.
Hard to go after two amazing sons. I have a different take on things, as Phil was my father-in-law. When I first met Phil, I have to admit, I was nervous, as I had heard of all his impressive accomplishments, and I really liked John, and I didn't want to blow it. This past year, I had the opportunity to see Phil more often, as he and Marcia lived much closer to John and I. It was during this time I more fully understood and appreciated Phil for all his accomplishments, academic, career, and otherwise. I learned Phil's meticulousness, a description that comes up, wasn't just a reflection of how he was able to graduate first in his class in MIT, have a successful career as a metallurgist, to pay his bills ahead of time, or to choose the best wife possible. We'll get back to that accomplishment later. Phil's meticulousness and attention to detail meant that beyond his serious and intense side that served him so well, he was able to master being selfless and fun-loving, even when he wasn't always feeling it. Phil tried not to let anyone worry about him, especially Marcia, no matter the situation. Phil excelled at making people feel good. When we went up to Concord for visits, you had to be alert. Phil quizzed us on our lives and our careers, and always enjoyed hearing about my whole family, and back then, especially my dad, who he grew to know well as a fellow New Yorker and Stuyvesant High student. Phil also liked to commandeer the table and tell stories. I particularly liked hearing about him in a comedy duo on a radio show back in the day, and as a tour guide at the Ralph Waldo Emerson House in Concord. He was definitely in his element as a showman. After Phil's hearing started to fail, and he was not a fan of wearing his hearing aid, a strange thing happened to him in Bermuda. Phil had lots of good stories, but for some reason, this one always struck my funny bone. The story goes like this. On a trip to Bermuda, Phil and Marcia were taking a stroll when a man walked by and said to Phil, "I'm not wearing a watch. Can you tell me what time it is?" To which Phil anxiously replied, "I am not a communist." The man was so startled and taken aback and very quickly moved away. When Marcia explains what the man actually said, Phil was so upset with himself, he ran down the boardwalk after the man, shouting, I know the time, here, take my watch." This became one of Phil's favorite stories to tell. Phil's self-deprecating humor always put us at ease. Until the very end, Phil mustered his sense of humor and enthusiasm for his friends and family, and even made fast friends with new acquaintances. Phil's last days were in the hospital, and he made the best of it. At the end of their shifts, he always wished the nurses a good night and a good rest. When his dear friend Maury Dratch called, Phil's characteristic wit was there, and he agreed with Maury, "Don't count me out yet." When each of Phil's grandchildren calls and asked, "How are you, Papa?" he beamed at the phone from his bed. "I'm great. How are you?" And he always closed with, "I love you." Seeing Phil over the past year also showed me how grateful a man he was. Okay, now we're back to his greatest accomplishment I referenced before. One of the aides last week in the hospital asked Phil how long he was married. Phil proudly answered, 68 years. She asked the secret to his success. Phil said, "I picked the best wife one could have." Phil modeled for all of us, well, love and graciousness. My kids remind me of Papa's vacuum kisses. He was very good at being silly for someone so smart. And Thanksgiving will never be the same without Phil, making us dig deep and come up with what we were grateful for, besides friends and family, he would always say, because obviously friends and family, that meant everything to Phil. Phil loved music, and one of his favorite songs to sing was "Oh, When the Saints Go Marching In." I hope it's okay to say Rabbi, because we're in a temple, but I have to imagine Phil was most definitely in that number.
We're pleased to invite each of Phil's grandchildren to the bima, so Abby will be first.
I have so many vivid memories of Papa. Growing up, nothing was as fun as getting off of a plane to see Grandma or Papa, or seeing them pull in our driveway in Buffalo. Most of my memories when I was little with Papa were me laughing. He made me laugh so much. He could make any activity fun, from playing games like Hit the Penny, to hiking outside, to the millions of imaginary games that we played, to all the stories and jokes that he told me. When I think of Papa, I think about how much and how often he would communicate that he loves me. He told me every time I saw him. He would say, "I love you so much," and blow me a kiss and ask if I caught it. He would leave me voicemails, send me emails. He would even, when I was little, send letters written in code with a key so I could decipher his message. And it was almost always, "It's Papa. I love you, Abigail." The last time I saw Papa, he was lying in his hospital bed, and right before I left, almost like magic, he said to me, "I love you so much. I'm always happy to see you," and blew me a kiss. I feel so lucky to have had a Papa that loved me so much and so deeply. And one of the memories that stands out to me time and time again is Papa communicating to me through the trees. When I was little, he told me that if I found a tree, I could whisper to it any message, and he would hear it in Concord, and the tree in Concord would tell him, and then I would hear in return from the tree that he loved me. I remember when I was little, we would practice with the trees before he would leave to go home. Sometimes when he'd call, he'd ask me if I'd been talking to the trees for him. And then more recently, it was maybe about 2 years ago, with Papa and Grandma and my dog Dodie, we were walking around Concord, and we got to the steep part of the walk where Papa would always say, "This is the part where I talk to God when the hill gets steep." And he asked if I remembered the trees, and if I would, after he's gone, still talk to the trees and tell him that I loved him. I told him, "Papa, we don't have to talk about that now. You have time." But of course I remember. When Papa died, I went outside, and it sounds very corny, but I found a tree, and I told Papa that I loved him. And I hope that you could hear me, Papa. You've changed my whole world and my whole life and made me feel so loved. I will miss you so much. And I will keep talking with the trees and giving you updates And whether you can hear me or not, I know what you'll say in reply. That you love me and that you're blowing me a kiss, and did I catch it? I'll miss you so much, Papa, and I'm very grateful for you.
We welcome Jake to the bima.
Everyone. So this is really the first time I've had to think about saying something like this, and to be honest, I wasn't really sure how something like this was supposed to go, but as I was reflecting yesterday, there was really one thing, and just much more simplistic than maybe some of the other stories, but that kept popping into my mind over and over again. And it was just the first, 2 or 3 words I would hear from Papa every time he picked up the phone or when we saw each other in person, with such a warmth and casual excitement with the, slightest bit of raspiness to it. And it was just the, "Oh, hi, Jake," that I can so clearly hear and will forever be imprinted in my mind. And I can so clearly hear him saying it to kind of each of you as well. "Hi, Sam. Hi, Abby, David, Jonathan, Rachel, Donna, Cynthia, Billy." Just a simple form. And then we'd continued on to catch up, or as a kid, would learn things, silly things like the equation for a circle or a line. And I truly had no idea at age 7 what he was talking about, with things like y equals mx plus c, no clue at all. But I'll never forget, it must have been in 5th grade math class or something, and I knew the answer to all of these equations just ingrained in me before they'd ever been taught. And the teacher asked how I ever knew that, and I said, "My papa taught me." And calling him later that day, beaming about it, knowing he would similarly be happy and excited, and he was so proud that he had taught me something that reflected positively on me in school. And always on these, similar visits or calls, I'd always come away thinking, Papa was a good man. It might be something people just say, but I really can't underline enough how true that is. He's an honorable man who put family above everything else. And I just look at the family we have here today, and I see quality people, good people who do the right thing and are shaped in that image. And that doesn't just happen by accident without a supportive head all the way at the top of the family. And so I mentioned how the first words of these calls or visits would always start with the excited, "Hi, Jake," or "Hi, anyone." But it would always end, always, without fail, with a remark from him, and I can still hear these words just as clearly, and I'm sure many of you can probably hear it just as clearly too, every single time, whether gathered around the dining room table in Concord just a few weeks ago at his 94th birthday in Connecticut, or over the phone on a random Tuesday evening, every time saying, "Thank you for calling or coming to visit. Grandma and I are so lucky. We are so very lucky to have such a wonderful family." And we would in kind say, "We're so lucky to have such incredible grandparents." And tell him I love him, and he would always respond with the same line in the most heartfelt manner at the end of every single call, just taking a pause and would say, "I love you so much. You have no idea. Take care." And that was always our goodbye, which will stay with me forever.
And we invite Sam to the bima.
When you think of heroicism these days, a lot of people point to a specific event or specific act that made someone heroic, especially now with social media. But to me, what I've learned is that real heroicism is not about one act, but about consistent acts, small acts of kindness, even in the quotidian events of life. And no one taught me that more than Papa. With Papa, what made him so special is the consistency that he performed these small acts in all of our lives. Every time I saw Papa, there was something to admire. Whether it was Papa who got me into science and entrepreneurship at a young age, from going to the science museum and playing with marbles, or testing his theory of how you could get something from nothing with a diamond, and why I decided to even pursue robotics. Whether it was Papa who could have me find the fun and excitement in something as seemingly mundane as hitting a penny with the tennis ball. Or whether it was Papa who taught me you don't need a lot of stories, but just a couple good ones you can repeat to the family to ease the tension and create a moment of relief. Or whether it was Papa who showed me what it meant to put family first, including always showing Grandma affection and love every single day with this iconic phrase, "Can you believe she fell for me? I'm the luckiest man in the world." These day in and day out heroic acts not only were foundational for me, but also translated down generations, where I see my dad now carry so many of the great same qualities, including having only one or two repeated stories, like the bloody Band-Aid, for his family. And I also see it with Uncle John and his kids as well. My only hope is I can continue this heroic tradition that Papa has started, because everyone should be lucky enough to have a Papa.
We invite Billy to the bima.
So I have two versions of the same speech. Papa, as a boy you learned the violin, urged by your father to take after your Uncle Herman, a professional. You worked and suffered the trials of classical training for several years. Beyond the musical cognizance you kept throughout your life that you demonstrated when singing in temple or at the Seder table, and not to mention your being the only immediate family member I knew of that wasn't remarkably unmusical, you deeply understood my pursuits. It came through in pride and encouragement, sometimes quick glances, a flash of a smile when I told you what I was working on. In your teenage years, you academically excelled at the best high school in New York City. At the same time, you worked with Nate Fast in a comedy duo, one that, according to you, was semi-professional and quite good. Good enough, you revealed jokingly, that it somewhat pained you to take your full scholarship to MIT. You delivered it with your Jewish, dry sense of humor that has become basically my entire comedic lexicon. It may have been an egotistical inclination, well, I suppose only as egotistical as one can be about their approval from their grandparents. But when you made jokes at the dinner table, I felt like I caught some of those same quick glances and flashes of a smile. You were making sure I caught the joke, sometimes subtly interjected in an otherwise serious conversation. If the joke fell flat and nobody noticed, we would still chuckle at that too. You taught me to laugh, to poke holes in pernicious self-seriousness. When you died, you were the oldest Stark, the oldest man in the family. You would have never taken the title of familial patriarch, but it had to be someone. I learned from you that being a man could be gentle, soft even, that to be fierce is to fiercely care for everyone you love, and to make sure they know it. I'm not sure anyone has told me they love me as many times as you did, Papa. Last week at the hospital, we listened to the Bach Cello Suite in C minor together. I sobbed uncontrollably, and a nurse came to the door and shut it, either because I was crying so loud, or more than likely because I had my speakers turned all the way up to account for my tinnitus and your diminished hearing. Leaving, my devastation was replaced by a sort of awe. You waited for everyone to visit you, in person and on the phone, before it was your time to go. Friday, late the next morning, you passed peacefully during a light snowfall, Grandma softly by your side. We had all said our goodbyes and had plenty of time to get to Shabbat services that afternoon, where we sang your favorite hymns and prayers. Great musicians, comedians, scientists, even good patriarchs, have all in common being masters of timing. Such was your life. You were amazing, Papa. You lived a beautiful 94 years, and I'm so lucky to have been there for 24 of them.
And the honor of sharing the final words this morning on behalf of the family goes to Rachel.
I see visions of you wherever I am. I feel your presence in Grandma's gentle hand, opening and waiting for yours. I can see the light of your goodbyes. The memories are sweet, like coffee ice cream or the cherry blossoms outside your house. In the warmth of your welcoming smile, I felt a weight lifted from the long car ride. I belonged in your house. It must have been the first easy rhythm with which I breathed myself to sleep. I awoke in the morning, guided by the smell of banana pancakes and gold light, turning this way and that. It must have been the lighthearted jokes at 8 a.m. that filled the room, sweet and syrupy fingers, as if you had all the time in the world, cradled in your weathered palms. I felt giddy with a desire to take another walk around Hayward Mill. My memories sit on the stairs, those carpeted 5 steps I'd run up, where pictures of your past met my ascent. Are you the light I'll see at the end? Through you, I see outside. Through you, my dad looks out for me. I see you walking in the circle of your street with energy to keep up with us. Both of us tied hand in hand, walking fast up the hill. Up and up, you carried me to more than just, greater than but. It was unparalleled understanding of myself, an insight into my surroundings. I ached to smell the trilliums and canna lilies and frigid orchids with you at Walden Pond. I was happiest when we wandered, thinking I would forever be able to follow your direction. What if we were forever this young? Shy as the youngest at the dinner table, I was scared to speak in such an outspoken family. You taught me my opinions were valuable. Floating alone, you dragged me down and captured my yearn to tell you what I learned in middle school classes, and then high school, and finally college. I expressed my hatred of chemistry, and you accepted that I was a so-called college historian and philosopher at heart. This is the bright family in which I learned to love, where it was so easy to love, with your tender love. All my unspent love gathers in the corners of my eyes, the lump in my throat, and in that hollow part of my chest. I'm homesick for your embrace, homesick of smells and sounds that remind me of you. And as I scan in vain the dappled bridge over the pond beside me for your shadow, or pause where we always did up the hill, with gasps of breath and spotting something, reach by habit for the back of your shoulder and cheek, I listen for the sound of your vacuum kiss. I listen for your footfall in my heart. What we were, we are. What we had, we have.
I thank all of you sincerely for such beautiful, heartfelt words. He would be very proud. A few announcements before we move toward the conclusion of our service here. So first, there will be a Shiva gathering just in the room next door. Immediately following this service, all are invited to take part, to have a nosh, and I especially invite you to share your own memories, stories, remembrances of Phil with the family, and especially to give them lots of hugs. Tomorrow, the burial will take place at 11 a.m. at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Concord, Massachusetts. And it'll be officiated by the clergy at Temple Amuna, which is very important to Marcia and Phil for many, many years. And we know that there are some friends who are with us via the live stream who would like to attend, and the family would like you to know that you are all very welcome to be there with them tomorrow. At this time, I invite all to rise for El Malei Rachamim. In Jewish tradition, we believe that there are 2 aspects to each human being. There's the physical aspect of who we are, our bodies, which grow and mature and then one day begin to fail us. And Phil's body is in this box, but his body is not what we spoke about this morning. We didn't talk about his hair color or how tall or his weight or anything like that. No, what we spoke about is his soul. All of the aspects, the qualities, the characteristics that make him who he is. That's his soul. And his soul is not in this box. His soul is dwelling now with God and dwells with us in the form of memories and stories that we carry. So with these words of El Malei Rachamim, we ask God to take very special loving care of the dear departed soul of Phil Stark, just as we will take care of his soul, his memory, his legacy here on earth. El Malei Rachamim shochen b'meromim, Hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina, im kedoshihim utahorim, kezohar harakia masirihim, et nishmat Feivel ben Yaakov, shehalach le'olamo, Baal harachamim yasirehu b'seter kanafav le'olamim, vayitzror b'tzorachayim et nishmato, Adonai hunachalato. V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, we ask that you grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Philip Stark, known in our tradition as Feivel ben Yaakov, who has now entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence and in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God, you are his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. I'll ask Daniel to distribute these words of Mourner's Kaddish. And as they're being distributed, I'll offer the words of Job, a prophet who lived so very many years ago, 3,000 years ago. And Job, like Phil, had everything that a person could possibly want. He had good health, he had a wonderful family, he had plenty of resources. And then one by one, each of those was taken away until Job sat lonely, in pain, and as a pauper. And still, even with everything taken away, Job refused to curse God. He said, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. God gives and God takes away, and no matter what, blessed be the name of God, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. So like Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given us a loved one who will never be forgotten. For all that is good and enduring in his life, we offer you the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, now you have taken him away. And so we pray for strength and trust and love as we say, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach, blessed is the name of God, now and forever. I invite you to join me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shmei d'kudesha barichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shalom araba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, huyasei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May God grant peace to all those who mourn and comfort to all the bereaved among us. And we say, Amen. At this time, I invite Phil and Marcia's grandchildren to align themselves in the central aisle so that they may escort the casket out to the waiting hearse. The rising of the sun, and it is going down.